It's Luke and Curtis.
Hey guys.
And our friend Joy.
Hi.
And Van Staldinen. Van Staldinen.
Yes. Yep. Perfect.
I'm not very good at that, pronouncing names. So
I know, but I can tell you practiced. And that's really respectful of you.
Well, we have talked Joy into joining us today as we talk about the next chapter in Malcolm Gladwell's Talking to Strangers, which deals with sexual consent, or most people just refer to it as consent now, but that's what we're dealing with, sexual consent. And we're looking at, specifically in this chapter, we're looking at sexual consent under the guise of heavy drinking. Honestly, right, Curtis? That's kind of where we were.
Well, like this. The whole, this ties into last week's episode a little bit because it's all under the umbrella of the section of the book is transparency. And last week we talked about how transparency between strangers is a complete lie. Like, you cannot read somebody. We all have the ability to put on like a mask and play whatever role we want you to think we're playing. So this next chapter like takes that to the highest level of, sexual encounters and can you even make that choice if you're drinking heavily, or, does alcohol play into it at all? Like what does it look like? There's a lot of questions.
Yeah. So, and so Malcolm, he cites one story specifically, the Brock Turner case, which is People of California versus Brock Turner, where he is a Stanford student, and he gets very inebriated and goes to a party to have a good time, right, with people, a frat party. And then it follows another girl, Chanel Miller, I think is her name. She went by Emily Doe through the case. But she also got together with friends to go to a party, both of them looking to have a good time. And for some reason, that night ended up with a convicted sexual abuser and a victim.
Yeah.
And so Malcolm's saying, what went wrong? And two people thinking they were going into a situation to have fun ends up with this story. How did that happen?
Two people in the jail being questioned by police. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of what this chapter is, and I hope other people have gotten a chance to read it and look at it. But what does that look like? I mean, I'm a dad. I've got kids. I've got a son that's going to go to college. I got a daughter that's probably going to go to college. And actually, that was a little sexist in how I phrased that.
Yeah,
wasn't
it? A little bit.
My son is going to go to college, but my daughter might go to college.
I don't know.
She is a woman.
That's why we have Joy.
Terrible.
See her eyes widen.
But we did. We brought Joy. We brought you in the conversation because we don't think that Curtis and I, we don't have a broad enough perspective on this, and not that we aren't intelligent and can't make good decisions, but like we needed a perspective that was female and that was smart, and so we thought we would bring you into that.
Thanks. Well, happy to be here.
Yeah.
I think the first thing that comes to my mind is when we were talking a little bit before we started recording is I get very defensive over women. I mean, I've had plenty of cases of just unwanted cat calls and things that just gross me out and so I immediately hear this case and I'm like, this is disgusting, and this is just something that women live with every day. And I also think two of my friends that in the time we've known each other and been very close have been raped. And they were raped by people that they did know very well. One was raped by her boyfriend. And so this case is really interesting because they didn't know each other at all.
Yeah.
No. Just two strangers meeting. And I think there's communication problems in that, but I think the biggest the biggest curtain over this is the alcohol consumption.
Yeah.
And I know we were talking before, and you were kind of running down during the case. They went through what people drank leading into the night, and it was Curtis. You were kind of saying, what was it?
It was crazy. It was like a bottle of wine for Emily Doe, or Chanel, is that her name?
Yeah, Chanel's her name. Yeah.
And then she's free pouring vodka, and then the dude Brock is pounding a 6-pack and then taking shots, and the two people they were supposed to go to the party with end up passing out. In different. They disconnected. We're going to meet back up at the party. But it's like these two people beside each other are drinking the same amount. One's passed out and one's going to party. Like it's not the best first foot forward in rational, good decision making.
Yeah. So they were already setting themselves up for it. But Malcolm looks at, well, what are the effects of alcohol then? Because the truth is, when both of them, their reports after the night, so that night in the police station, their reports, both of them are saying, I don't remember anything.
Yeah.
And Brock's story changed a little bit when he got to trial. He had some memories.
Well, that was the thing. It's like, that's the that mismatch thing. He's trying to match he knows what he needs to say. And the police are asking him, like, did she say yes? And he's like, I think so. I'm pretty sure she did. Well, he said that because that's what needs to be said for him not to be in trouble,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And she's under no pressure to like have the right answer, and they're asking her, and it's like, I don't remember. I don't know.
Yeah. And I think that's and we're going to move on from this specific story and just talk about it. But I think that's the setup of this, is we end up in these situations, and sometimes alcohol causes us to be kind of, I guess I traditionally have always said, well, alcohol causes me to be a different person.
Well, that's the I guess the old understanding, the old wise tale is like, what's said by a drunken person reveals like who they are underneath. That's not the saying. I'm paraphrasing. I can't remember it all right now. But this goes to, he brings up the story of this researcher who's living with some like working tribe in, I think it's Bolivia. And he's writing all, they've lived with him for months. Might even have been, more than that, like up to a year. But he's writing all his, compiling his notes, all his research, and making his paper. And then he realizes that the biggest story from this he completely missed is these people got together on the weekends and just drank, like 180 proof. When he brought that back to, his peers, they're like, you did not drink that much, like, or that, that's what we used to clean our lab equipment. Yeah. And there's like, no,
that's crazy.
That's what they did. Yeah. So he was saying that, and during this time, like, there was no fights, there were no sexual assaults. It was, these people came together, drank. Their custom was they fill up a cup, I drink half of it, toast it to this person, they drink half of it, and then that person fills the cup back up and drinks half, and then gives it to the next person. And they just do this for 2 days straight. And if you have to go sleep, you go sleep, and then you come back, and like, they're just drinking nonstop.
And that's every week.
Yeah,
like
it's
every
weekend they're doing that, and they don't drink alone. But he introduces this idea of myopia, and that seems to be the consensus now, that alcohol is not an agent to get rid of your inhibitions, but an agent to make you a product of your surroundings. So when you the example he used is, if you drink alone to, like, I've had a bad week, I feel lonely, I'm going to drink and have a good night. Well, if you're drinking at home by yourself, you're going to feel lonely. That environment you've created for yourself is just going to magnify. Yeah. But if you're going out to a ball game and everyone's cheering and your team's winning and you're drinking, like, that long-term, those problems that are waiting for you at home,
fade away.
Your comprehension, your vision is so in the moment that it's all gone, So that was
the idea of like going out to blow off some steam.
Yeah.
I want to go out and forget this. Yeah.
So, I mean, that was his idea, that I guess, well, not his idea, but like the established researchers' consensus is that, we're not getting rid of inhibitions. We're morphing ourselves into products of our surrounding.
Yeah.
So what does that look like for super hyper sexualized kids drinking too much?
Yeah. I
when
mean,
people
yeah,
are
in the
tables
context
and
of
stuff.
in the context of a frat party, right? What
Yeah.
does that look like?
Or like
How do you become the product of your surroundings when those are your surroundings?
Yeah. And like, I mean, that's where the Brock Turner case happened, was at a frat party, but it just as easily could happen at like, any of those crappy bars, or, places where college kids get together with their fake IDs, or
Yep.
anything like that,
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So something that I was thinking about is, all the times in college, when my girlfriends and I would get dressed up and we would fix our hair and we would wear a new outfit and we would like make our makeup look nice. I mean, it would take hours, like hours.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is none of us ever thought we're doing this for, like I said, mating ritual, or like let's see if we can impress some men.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, we'll look so cute and we'll take Facebook profile pics.
Mm-hmm.
And so how does, like, also with that, so this is part of the party mentality in college, even before alcohol. And so how does that manifest to end up in a rape situation?
Yeah.
Like, even,
Yeah. And I think, Chanel's come out with a book after the fact, and she's been vocal about her position on stuff. And it's strange to me. Malcolm really looks in his research and says alcohol was definitely a contributing agent in all of this.
Almost a major factor. Like in the chapter, major. Like I would say, like consent, and I'll just lay this at the beginning, is like, we don't really even know what consent is. Like they had done this research where they were asking men and women like different actions that cause consent. And, one action from men or from the woman, because it's always going to be the woman who is given the consent. Well, mostly. I don't know. Well, I don't want to get into that with the whatever. But like men would say like 50% say this action is giving me consent, where the women would say 40. And you could list any action at all, and it was always that. So we don't even know. There are no like rules.
And if I remember, it was even split among women. Like they thought, like
that's what 50%
I mean, like, of them thought and 50% of them didn't.
Yeah, it was like 60-40 for women, 50-50 for guys. Like it's clearly a case by case thing,
Yeah.
And then
the show New Girl, they do even like a spoof on it, where she's in high school and she's in like this consent club, where and her prom date says to her, "I would like to kiss you now. Do I have your consent?" And she said, "Yes, you have my consent."
Yeah.
And then he said, "I would like to touch your shoulders. Do I have your consent?" I mean, every little thing.
Yeah.
She would say, "Yes, you have my consent," which is like over the top and funny.
Right.
And then it's like, well, is that what it takes?
Yeah, exactly.
But, is that where we need to go?
That's a place we could end up.
Yeah. And we know that we've all been in relationships. We know that relationships are more organic than that.
Yeah.
And so to sterilize them out and make them into robots, I mean, that's not human, know? And I think Malcolm deals with that throughout the book, when he talks about default to truth, when he talks about hyper suspicion, when he, all these different areas engaging in, in police work. Like when you look at all of that, you could boil it all down and say, hey, it'd be better if we were robots.
Yeah.
And evaluating even judges. It'd be better if we just gave them a sheet that said all the bullet points and they didn't meet the defendant. Like that would be better result. But we're human.
Yeah.
And that's not the human experience. And I think that's the same when we deal with consent. I mean, when I'm teaching my little boy and girl about what this is going to look like and helping them make good decisions, when I'm teaching them about consent, it's, I have to take into consideration the human experience, which is not, hey, sign this form for me quick because we're going to make out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's not the human experience. What do you think, Kurt? I mean, is it dangerous for us to define? This is actually a conversation in a lot of things. Legal definition of things. Sometimes we don't define them because it leads us down a wrong road. If you look at
Well, there was a UK trial where the judge basically said that. I mean, one guy got convicted for rape, not in the same way that the Brock case played out. It was very, very different. The two, they went back to the woman's apartment. He asked if she wanted him to say. She said no, but up until that point, like, he had no idea that, you know, she didn't want to. And they were just both so plastered that, like, she wasn't saying anything. He was taking that as consent. He leaves. He comes back the next day so, like, oblivious. He's asking her if she wants to go get lunch, you know, and she doesn't answer the door, tells him to go away, files charges. He goes to jail, appeals it, and he's released, and the charges are dropped. But, like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what that looks like. I think that it's just there's a lot of conversations that we're not having with kids. It seems to me to be the lesson to learn from this, because this is a heavy thing. And, you know, you see these things happening, but it's mostly happening in the young people's scene, in the early 20s, late 20s. You know, that's where this seems to be the biggest problem. And it's because
with alcohol consumption, like all this whole alcohol consent situation, I would say young people. I mean, because we know that rape and things like this have been happening just ever.
But, like, we're throwing our kids into the deep end of the pool and saying, hey, sink or swim, but, like, it's pretty big consequence if they're sinking, you know?
Yeah. And I think with that UK case too, I'm pretty sure it was people call it retroactive repeal of consent. Is kind of what they framed around that one, is the idea that she was consenting through it, but when she's not blacked out, when she's not got alcohol in her, she's like, that's not something I would do. That's not something I wanted to do. I didn't want to do that. No, there's no chance that I would want to do that. And that's kind of the reasoning behind the him winning the appeal, is the idea that you can't retroactively pull consent. And yes, you can consent if you're drunk, which, you know, in state of California, that's one of the big things was Emily Doe was past the point with alcohol consumption, 0.12 or something like that. She was past that point. So in the state of California, she can no longer give consent.
Well, that was the major, I think, decider, like the piece of evidence is they got a voicemail that she had sent to her boyfriend, and you couldn't understand her. Like, if you were pulled over and you're talking like that, you cop wouldn't even do a test. It's like, get out of the car. Like, you're going, we're going to sleep this off, and, you know, you're facing some charges. And then we're saying, no, that person has the ability to, you know, we don't trust them behind a vehicle, but we're going to trust them with this other stuff.
Yeah, and they couldn't sign a legal contract in that state with a notary. And so maybe they can't consent. I mean, really, I mean, that's the law. And so, but we don't legally define things all the time because they're such moving targets, and we don't know what they are because they're so much a part of the human experience.
Yeah.
And I think we could say, oh, let's define what it is. But I think that road ends somewhere that's not human. And so we never make it all the way down it. You know what I mean? I think it's I think it's similar to the idea of where does life begin? And I don't want to get into that debate, but that's the same thing. We've not legally defined where life begins, and we're not going to. Like, come on,
you can't.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you're not gonna do that because that's not that. It's out there, and I think consent might be one of those things where it's out there enough to where we can't actually define what it is in every situation. And so we can't legally define it. And so we're going to have to teach our boys and girls as they grow up that, you know, you have to look for these, you have to be better at telling what signals are and understanding them. And when you add large amounts of alcohol into the equation, it's going to be hard to give the signals, and it's going to be hard to read the signals. And I think, Joy, you've got a great book.
But to
ask Joy.
For those listening, I'm actually pregnant with a little boy. And my sister, my sister just got me a book for him. It's a board book, like for toddlers, called My First Book of Feminism for Boys, which I just cried when I got, because I'm a feminist. So
That's awesome.
But one page says, if a girl says, "Don't touch me," or asks you to go, you must leave her alone, because no means no. And obviously that's like cut and dry for a toddler.
Yeah.
And I know, when you're in a loving, committed relationship, everything is different. And, but also like with that, you have to start, like I have to start when my son is that age, teaching him that like you in your male white body have certain, like you won't carry your keys in between your fingers back to your car.
Mm-hmm.
You won't do that. And that's what women are doing. And I think, so the consent thing goes into that. But also for those listening, I think for me, hearing a lot of these things, like the point that we're trying to talk about is the consent issue and the alcohol issue. So it was a little bit uncomfortable at first to start bringing these topics up, because you're thinking like, oh, Brock Turner, like I remember seeing the face.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, and you remember like hearing that these things, horrible things happen behind a dumpster, which is repulsive,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
And then you also remember hearing that he was on the swim team, and part of the defense was, oh, well, one night is going to ruin his whole life.
Yeah.
And
well, that's what
we all said. We all kind of said,
Yeah.
like
that's
exactly.
it is.
It was a crime. Yeah. I think it was the defense was, 3 minutes of action is going to ruin his whole life. And I was like, how long do you think a murder takes? Stuff is pretty quick, and it should follow you. Like you made that choice.
Yeah. So that I do think is important to say. And so I had to kind of like keep working through this to get to the point where we're having this conversation about just alcohol and consent, to kind of be like, yes, this is all messy and ugly and gross.
Yeah.
And how did we get here?
Well, yeah. And what do you think about, like, when I hear the definition of myopia is, we're creating, these people are now products of their environment, but it seems to be like the natural place to go for these young men to be a little more aggressive, sexually than they necessarily would have the courage to. They've got those social barriers, like, I'm hormones are raging, but I know that if I act on this, then I'm going to face harsh punishment from society, as they should. And then they're just given this green light. And then you see these other societies where way more drinking is happening, way more like heavy drinking is happening, and they don't have these issues. Is that not like a reflection on, you can blame the frat parties, but is it not, our country, you're in the Netherlands, but you grew up here in America. Is that not like a reflection on our failures to, view women as anything other than an object, like to put our sexuality above like their right not to be violated?
Well, I think you made a good point. I think, Curtis, you said earlier, like, of course, we are in a patriarchal society, and what if we not taught boys as children and teens that when we send them off to college, they're like, oh, well, this is kind of what we do.
Yeah.
Right. Like not necessarily we go out and rape people, but like, okay, I guess we go get drunk and we see if we can find someone who will get drunk and have sex with us.
Yeah. I mean, we're just creating Lord of the Flies and these.
Well, there's no preparation.
Yeah.
There's no
it's
on it, nothing.
Yeah.
But, and I'll say this too, I want to do a couple quotes here from Chanel. I've watched a bunch of interviews that she's taken, and one of them, and it's incredibly simple, but it's one of those things that like I want to speak like your kid's book that this seems very simple, but you're going to speak it into your kid because you're like, I want you to own this truth and know it, no matter your state. And so one of them she said is, nobody is allowed to hurt you. Period. Doesn't and her whole thing is, it doesn't matter if I'm blackout drunk. It does, regardless of my state, no one's allowed to hurt me. And I thought that was a powerful one. But then she says, I'm tired of fixing who I have to be and hiding to make it through the day.
Yeah.
And she was talking about the context of, okay, this happened at a party when I was blacked out. I drank too much. Okay. She's like, I drank too much. We could stop the definition there. Okay. I drank too much. That's the end of the discussion. She even said that.
Yeah.
But she said, that's not the case during the day when I'm at work and I'm being pressured by guys, or I'm being hit on by guys, or I'm constantly dealing with this pressure. Like, I have to deal with this all day long, and alcohol put me in a position where I couldn't deal with it. But the alcohol wasn't the problem. The problem was the pressure I was getting.
Right.
And I thought that was interesting. And as we talk about speaking into our kids and what we want them to do, I think we have done a good job. I'll be honest. We've done a good job speaking into women as young girls and saying, hey, put the keys between your knuckles. Hey, don't walk out to your car alone when it's dark. Hey, don't park on this street because it's not a good area to be in for you. Or, don't put yourself in this situation, or don't wear these clothes because they're too revealing. I think we have spoke those things into our daughters. And I'm going to be honest, even the dressing, you know what I mean? What you wear, what are you inviting? I'm going to speak that into my daughter. And plenty of people will tell me, oh, that's horrible to do, or you shouldn't do that. I'm going to speak that into my daughter. But what I'm going to speak into my son is, it doesn't matter what she's wearing. She's not asking for anything she doesn't ask for.
Yeah.
Right.
And,
I think
and so,
that's a good
and I
point.
think that's the part of the conversation that we haven't shared. And when you look at Malcolm's book, okay, the whole thing started with Sandra Bland. Okay. He opens it up and he closes with that too. But it's this idea of police, of strangers interacting, police interacting with someone they've never met, driving a car that's of a different race than them, and of maybe, seems to be a different economic status, whatever it is. There's a difference there that causes them to not be able to communicate. And we've you hear the stories all the time, and I hate them. But for me, I'm scared to death of police officers. And so when I get pulled over, I'm like, hands on the wheel. They walk up and I'm like, hey, I have a permit to carry a weapon, but I'm not carrying one. Like, I am like, I'm on it because I'm scared to death of cops. I don't even know why. I have no idea. But I am. And so you hear these stories coming out of the Black community about, sorry, I'm taking a turn back to the concept of the whole book. Is that all right? So when you see this concept happening in communities where they're teaching their kids, hey, when a cop pulls you over, you have to be respectful, you have to be compliant, you have to be these things. And they're teaching their kids this. Things that didn't have to be taught to me. My dad didn't teach me that. But because of, but they do teach, kids in Black communities, that they're teaching them that. And we can all sit around and say, well, they shouldn't have to teach them that. I agree. They shouldn't have to teach them that. But we're probably just not teaching the other side.
Yeah.
Who is coming alongside police officers and saying, hey, your methods of policing do not jive well with this. You need to walk into a situation and be ready to be accepting of someone, and you have to de-escalate the situation, not ramp it up. Because I don't think we're teaching the other side of it. You know what I mean? When you walk up to a car, someone's scared. We're not teaching that. And
I like that comparison. I think that's a really helpful way to look at it.
I think that's a good conversation that we need to have. And Joy, I'd like to have you back on when we talk about that, because I like your ideas on it. But like pulling it back to like the, we've learned, at least I hope we've learned, that teaching abstinence is not going to work. So like this bubble that we're putting our kids in, and then releasing them into the wild, like it's setting us up for failure. And like the issue with it is that when we're releasing them out, it's into this, it's into the setting where heavy drinking is the norm, So we're asking them to figure the stuff out while they're extremely intoxicated. This stuff isn't happening. This crossed wires of, did she say yeah? Did she not say yeah? Is not happening during the day in the halls between the classes. It's happening in the nightclubs, in different parties, at the house parties. So I think, I don't know, like what is the lesson we learned from this? Like Joy, I pulled a quote from, and it was saying that, respect is very complicated thought process, and it's sizing up the needs of others while moderating our own desires and considering the long-term effects of that. So Malcolm keeps pointing back to alcohol being the problem, and Chanel, like we'll link her court, the final letter that she has at the end of the trial, but she's like laughing that idea off. It's like, yeah, go to an AA meeting if you have an issue with alcohol. The lesson should be to not rape women or not to take advantage of them. And so, Joy, you're a minister. Luke, me and you have both been on staff at different churches. If we look back to what Jesus says, and Joy, I've seen you share this too. It's these men were coming to Jesus and saying, "Hey, these women are dressing weird. Can we go ask them to change? I feel like they need to go change." It's like, no, you should just pluck your eye out. What is us plucking? Like, what does that look like? For us today, is plucking our eye out, cutting down on this excessive alcohol, or is it, hey, chill out with the grinding and
it's
stuff?
Interesting to think about, like, what, obviously the Bible's full of metaphors, and it's given as an opportunity for us to use today. And so, like, I liked what we were saying earlier about, like, what is plucking out your eye in the situation?
Yeah.
And maybe it's different for everyone.
Yeah.
Right? Like, maybe for some people it means, like, don't drink. Maybe for some people is don't drink around women. Maybe, which probably means you shouldn't drink. But maybe it means start teaching your boys young about feminism.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many ways that we can pluck our eyes out and pluck at this problem.
I think a lot of, like, with the older generation too, like, feminism gets a bad rap, and I don't know why. Well, I kind of do, but, like,
I think most of us know why.
They'll do like this, with anything. They point out the most, like, obviously flawed person in a movement and say, this is how all of them are, just throw it all out. Meanwhile, people have those ideas. Meanwhile, they've never read, a competent feminist author. They've never dove into, and we're seeing this right now. I hate to take the same turn Luke did, but, like, with the protests going on with Floyd, like, people are taking a second look at this Black Lives Matter movement and saying, well, maybe I assumed a lot that is not actually there. Maybe there is a problem with the feminism. It's like, maybe in light of all these terrible court proceedings that we're having to watch, maybe there is more to what they're saying than when I just scoffed it off. Maybe I didn't see that. And maybe the eye plucking is taking away that pride and diving back into it and taking these people seriously. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, I think that makes really good sense. I like, you guys are so good at comparisons. I listen to your podcast, and I'm like, wait, sometimes I know they're disagreeing, but are they, like, this is good and this is good and this is good?
Yeah.
People ask that all the time. Like, do you guys actually agree or disagree? I was like, well, we're having a conversation. We're both learning.
We're figuring it out.
I think in a when you're having a conversation and you're learning from each other, sometimes you're disagreeing and sometimes you're coming around to an opinion. You know what I mean? Like,
we all understand the world in our own way, and I think the comparisons and comparing our comparison, that's just how we're going to conceptualize these ideas. Is, well, I didn't ever think of it like that. I don't know how many times I've had a conversation where I get someone to see something another person is saying, and the resolution is, well, I just never thought of it like that. I never saw it like that. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I don't know. Like, at the end of the day, we've got, our daughters, our sisters at risk, and they're already going through enough. Like, let's teach our sons because we change the world by teaching our children and affecting the people around us. So maybe we just do a better job at that and have those hard conversations. It's going to be really weird when I talk to William about this, but it's something that he has to know and learn in order to be a good person,
But we talked about it a little bit beforehand. It's, I mentioned it in movies, in our media, in what we're consuming right now. We're teaching men and women that men try to talk women into having sex, and when they are successful, they get to have sex.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like that's if you watch movie, I mean that's where this is going.
Well, that's what I mean by like the myopia. Like, is that the setting
Yeah.
we're making in our society, and should we not be pushing against that more than we're saying that women shouldn't be drinking so much?
Yeah. And that's, we have to change the surrounding, or we have to change that story around it. And I think, you know, when I think about my son, I don't want him to think that women are a conquest to get, you know what I mean? Like, and if he ends up thinking that, and again, I think we've taught women well to protect themselves. Like, we've been doing a good job of that. And I don't know that Chanel, her character was the, you know, or her situation was the best example of that. But, you know, but we have been teaching women well. We now need to teach boys well. I think that's a big thing. You know what I mean? And I think alcohol complicates the problem, and we could talk all day long about, you know, we can go back to the prohibition era of 1920 if you want, you know, but at the end of the day, we have to teach them in the best setting, and hopefully those teachings will go into the worst with
right. And it's not like just alcohol happens, like you're drunk, you know, and then you're in the situation. Like this chapter spends a lot of time on alcohol, and I get what he's saying, but at the end of the day, like, these settings seem to be the issue. Like, when alcohol plays into it, it's we're creating products of our surroundings. Well, then let's change the surroundings, you know, like that. I would rather get drunk with the Bolivia tribe, you know, like in and I don't have to worry about it, you know, like it's a non-issue. So we can't just
maybe
blame
not right
alcohol.
Now during COVID, maybe not sharing a cup.
Well, I don't know if it's that strong. Wouldn't it kill?
It probably can't live on the glass.
They clean lab equipment with that stuff. That was the funniest part of that too, was this guy came home and he was like, yeah, man. And this was the proof of it. He's like, that did not happen. You're lying. And so they
can't consume that.
They set up this experiment, and he's drinking on a Tuesday morning, and he walks home, and the ambulance is following home, and his wife's like, what are you doing? It's like, it's all for research. Like, I'm going, I think they said he slept for 3 days straight.
It was something crazy.
You know, I'm thinking about the whole, like, alcohol. I don't think this case could have blown up the way it did without alcohol. Because I mean, even though to a lot of us it may have been cut and dry, I think the alcohol is what made it a case. And
that is
and I'm thinking about this is so crazy. I remember watching the show Real World, which I don't even think comes on anymore, and I was watching it with my mom, which is even weirder. So this is like so long ago, but
we'd be on like Real World 67 right now or something.
I know,
and it's the original cast that is 67 now.
One girl on there said, she said, I try whenever I go out, I always lose things. I can't find my phone. And she's like, and this time it was my wallet. So I don't have my ID. I had to find this, find that. And my mom is watching this like, why are you going out and drinking if this is every time? Like, this seems logical that this is not a good situation for you. And maybe that's that's different than consent, but it's also like the alcohol piece of it, right?
And that was a point he touched on in the chapter, is our drinking habits are getting worse and worse. Like, back in the day, blackout was kind of, you know, it might happen to 1 out of 50
you're crazy friend.
People, but like now it's like 1 out of 10 people have been blackout drunk in the last month from the studies they were doing. And it's just, I mean, I don't know, what is it like? It's a reflection of our society. I think there's people who are have nothing else to do other than drink, you know, and that's a different conversation entirely. I think from the consent one, but like when you put those two together, it's like we've got a spiraling problem with alcoholism in the country and binge drinking in the college setting. But then we do have an issue with, you know, females not being respected as anything other than a finish line. You know what I mean?
When you put that surrounding and that chemical together, it doesn't end well.
You're turning I think he said something to the effect of, you're turning a very complicated decision into an impossible one to make, like, or a situation. Like, it's impossible for both parties to come out of this, like, feeling okay with themselves. It's like, I wasn't in complete control of my mind, so I can't completely be okay with what was done. And it's just a bad mix.
Yeah.
I was thinking when we were just talking though before I brought up the real world, it sounded I'm kind of throwing things together as we talk, which is kind of cool. You said we're not we're learning.
Yeah,
right?
That's the whole point. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think one thing we were kind of coming to is it's about education.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
so.
And when can that education start? Are we bold enough to have these conversations?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that seemed to be one thing that we could all agree on and know that we can certainly do better.
We can do better educating, and I think that's got to be where it starts, is with our kids at home, and with if you're working in your schools, or if you're working in your churches or whatever, start those conversations and be more open to talking about those hard subjects and getting to it, and getting to the point and saying, hey, like your book, no means no. That seems a ridiculous thing to say, but apparently it's an issue, so so let's teach it.
I was sharing earlier that my sister, whenever she has a 2.5-year-old, and whenever they're getting to leave somewhere and someone says, Charlotte, give me a hug, my sister says, Charlotte, do you want to give her a hug? You get to tell her, right? At 2.5, you still get to say so. And giving her that ownership. And then also my little book was telling a little boy, you don't get to hug a woman or a child unless you ask. And that's very primal, or primary, not primal, primary. It is kind of primal. It's very primary, and it'll evolve as you grow older, just like your math skills go from 1 + 1.
We don't have to dump all this stuff on our 5-year-olds, but maybe we sprinkle in when they're 2. Hey, you have to our daughters. Hey, you have ownership of your body. You're more than a finish line. Hey, and we tell our sons, hey, seeing women as a finish line is a terrible thing. Like, we need to, and more in our society, and we're coming out, like, for thousands of years, it's been men as first-class citizens and women as second. How long ago was it that they were property? A couple thousand years back. And here in America, they've just been voting for 70 years, something like that. A little bit longer than that, but
almost 100 now, right?
And we've got to realize that, like, these norms that we have are outdated. We've got to start taking the next step, and that I think that is just incremental progress. As much as I would like the world to be perfect today, it's going to be my son and my daughter who are going to take that next step, and then it's going to be their son and daughter and if we teach them the right things now, they're going to outgrow us in their morality, and we've just got to be, I think, for, like, if you're like the abstinence teacher listening to this, it's getting out of the way of progress. Like, hey, that was a great idea when you came up with it. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it was. In the world where, birth control was not readily available, maybe that was the best choice. But right now, it's something different. So maybe step back or step out of the way for new ideas to change our society for the better. And when I get that age, we need to step back. As the fathers and mothers now, it's our job to teach and then get out of the way a little bit.
I'm going to be 40 this year, and laugh. You're going to be 40 someday.
I'll be 30 this year.
So I'm going to be 40 this year, and like I've always thought. I remember in my early 20s, where, like, I don't know why people aren't letting me lead and stuff, and now I look back, I totally understand why. But it's funny
because I think the opposite.
Like people.
As a youth minister, I'm like, adults, be quiet. Like, just let the youth preach.
No, but the funny thing is like, once I became comfortable, like really, like, no, I do have a good idea. I feel like I'm now getting to the point where I have to hand the leadership down. You know what I mean? Or hand the and it's funny, like, once you get to the point where, like, I'm capable of doing this, it's like you also need to start handing that down
Yeah.
to the next. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, that's a bummer. I want to keep wearing the hat. I want to keep.
I think we get more conservative as we age. Just by definition, that seems to be like the trend throughout history. And I think the best conservative is one that is still, you know, just by definition, you're going to be opposed to new ideas. And it's that like remembering back when you were younger and you had new ideas and someone stood in your way. And it's like, okay, I get the whole, well, you know, I remember thinking like that when I was your age. And I get that. That's logical, you know, but like at the same point, we've got a world that is just becoming less and less livable. So maybe it's time to try some new ideas, you know, and if they don't work, you know, give them a couple years, give them 5 years. If they don't work, let's try something else, you know, but this like, let's do this because we've been doing this, like, especially with our, our interactions between men and women, like it's a different world than it was in the Old Testament, the New Testament, in the 50s. Like it's different.
And it's not necessarily bad.
And it's not going to go back.
Worse. Yeah.
No. And it's not going to go back, but we've got to figure out a new game plan because the old one is outdated. And maybe it's time to listen to women a little bit, you know?
Yeah. Cool.
Actually, that's the last page of the book.
Oh, yeah. Let's do that. Yeah.
Be respectful, be kind, be fair, and here's why. Because women are holding up half of the sky.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
I like it.
We're at the point now where it's almost 50-50. And we work alongside them. They're voting, they're raising our kids, they're our partners, we're raising our kids now too. Like it's a different world than Leave It to Beaver was. So it's time for a new target to aim towards, you know?
Absolutely. Well, hey guys, I think we're wrapping this one up.
Yeah, this one's a little bit longer, but
it is.
It went by quickly.
And I think some of the themes too we'll probably be talking about in future episodes as well. I don't think it's a conversation that ends, and so I don't think it'll be a conversation that we stop talking about.
Yeah.
But I do want to thank everybody for joining us in this conversation. Especially Joy. Thanks for being here.
It's a thrill to be here. I mean, it's exciting to listen to the podcast, but getting to talk to you guys is like.
Well, I mean,
I know you were friends before this, but I also feel like a little starstruck.
Oh no, we're starstruck from you.
Me and Luke, can't believe you agreed.
Yeah, that's seriously it. And it's funny because me and Luke met you at the same time, so it's like this shared timeline of things we know, and it's crazy. Gosh,
it is crazy. It's insane.
Well, I think we mentioned it in the promo video or something like that, but Joy's got a podcast that she'll be releasing soon, adding to, so we'll link that. And I listened to your first episode and it was awesome.
And you've got a blog up there too.
Yeah, and a blog.
I do.
Which is very great.
Yeah.
Thanks. So my husband and I lost a pregnancy at 8 weeks gestation, and it was the worst thing that's ever happened to us. And especially me, but him too, have kind of become voices in that field. And so I have a blog and I have a podcast called Love and Lost. The podcast launches on June 1st. So
that's awesome.
Listen to it.
Yeah, definitely listen to it. Check out the blog, and then engage with us too. If you want to further this discussion, drop questions or comments, concerns, things you're not happy with about us in the comment section on YouTube, or reach out to us individually. We've all got social media, so you can reach out and continue the conversation. I think Joy's with us in that. She likes good conversation. She's not looking to fight with you. She's looking to learn. She's looking to pour into you if she knows something you don't. And so I think that's who we are and how to connect with us. Sound good? Can we say goodbye?
Yeah. Hope to have you back soon, Joy.
Yes.
I would be thrilled.
Please join us again.
That'd be awesome. Thanks, guys.
Adios.
Bye.